So let me introduce myself. My name is Bulent Erbilgin. I'm visiting professor at KAUST. I've been in the industry for many years as VP of Engineering and VP of Products, and I've been part of 7 startups. And in the last several years, I've been teaching at University of California, Berkeley, Northeastern University, and KAUST. I teach things like ethics, teaming, entrepreneurship, and so on. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Lama Hakim. Lama? No sound. Somebody said no sound.
Hello,
Lama,
everyone.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
I can hear you.
Yes. Okay, so let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Lama Hakim. I'm Dr. Lama Hakim. I'm training specialist at the Entrepreneurship Center at KAUST. I co-teach the elective course for KAUST students with Professor Bulent. I'm specialized in conflict resolution and design thinking, and I also teach ethics like at the center. So for today, let me start. So our topic, as you know, is ideation. So we're going to talk about where ideas come from. So for newcomers, please make sure that you mute yourself before you join the session so we don't disrupt other people. So let's go back. Where ideas come from. Ideas, like actually, it's around us. It's everywhere. It's coming from personal experience. You go around, you walk, you go to a park, a restaurant, you observe things and you realize these things, maybe we can enhance it or like change it or do it in a different way. So that's one part. Another thing, idea comes from technological innovations. Like, let me give you an example. Innovation like smartphones, it opens the door so many new innovation and businesses. We have so many apps like in the world, and that's like so many, it opens the door to so many ideas to be implemented. Another thing, experts, talking to experts in your field or also in other different fields that may encourage you or encourage your brain to come up with new ideas. Literature, including like books, articles, cases, going to conferences, attending workshops, patents may be also like a start in order to help you to create or come up with new ideas. Development partners, that's another thing. Also related work experience, something that's related to your field. And also frustration with the current situation. And to be honest with you, for me, this is where I get most of the ideas, because when people are frustrated, their brain just works so quickly to come up with new ideas and how to fix that. So whenever you are frustrated about something, you feel like they should do it this way, they should do it that way. So your brain started to ideate so quickly in so many different directions. Okay. So let's watch together actually this video and see how can we like what can we see in here. So I have to unplug my. Let me know if you hear it.
Incubator, state-of-the-art technology. But more often than not, they're cobbled together from whatever parts that happen to be around nearby. We take ideas from other people, from people we've learned from people we run into in the coffee shop. We stitch them together into new forms and we create something new. That's really where innovation happens. And that means that we have to change some of our models of kind of what innovation and deep thinking really looks like, right? I mean, this is one vision of it. Another is Newton and the apple. This is the statue that Newton was at Cambridge. This is a statue from Oxford. You know, you're sitting there thinking a deep thought and the apple falls from the tree and you have a theory of gravity. In fact, the spaces that have historically led to innovation tend to look like this, right? This is Hogarth's famous painting of a kind of political dinner at a tavern, but this is what the coffee shops looked like back then. This is the kind of chaotic environment where ideas were likely to come together, where people are likely to have kind of new, interesting, unpredictable collisions, people from different backgrounds. So if we're trying to build organizations that are more innovative, we have to build spaces that, strangely enough, look a little bit more like this. This is what your office should look like. It's part of my message here. And one of the problems with this is that people are actually, when you research this field, people are notoriously unreliable when they actually kind of self-report on where they have their own good ideas or their history of their best ideas. And a few years ago, a wonderful researcher named Kevin Dunbar decided to go around and basically do the big brother approach to figuring out where good ideas come from. went to a bunch of science labs around the world and videotaped everyone as they were doing every little bit of their job. So when they were sitting in front of the microscope, when they were talking to their colleagues at the water cooler and all these things. And he recorded all these conversations and tried to figure out where the most important ideas, where they happened. And when we think about the classic image of the scientist in the lab, we have this image, they're poring over the microscope and they see something, in the tissue sample and, oh, eureka, they've got the idea. What happened actually when Dunbar kind of looked at the tape is that in fact, almost all the important breakthrough ideas did not happen alone in the lab in front of the microscope. They happened at the conference table at the weekly lab meeting when everybody got together and shared their kind of latest data and findings. Oftentimes when people shared the mistakes they were having, the error, the noise, and the signal they were discovering. And something about that environment, and I've started calling it the kind of the liquid network, where you have lots of different ideas that are together, different backgrounds, different interests, jostling with each other, bouncing off each other. That environment is in fact the environment that leads to innovation.
As you can see that the previous video included most of the topics that we talked about. So now we're going to move to ideation skills. There are so many ideation skills that you can leverage around you. One of these skills is associating. And what do we mean by associating is you bring one idea from different, let's say, measure of different, let's say, experience, and you blend it to, or from different field, and you blend it to another idea from another field in order to create a new invention or a new solution that you come up with. So let me talk about the Medici effect. So I'm not sure if you guys know what is this city, but this is Florence in Italy. And actually, the Medici family, they were thinking of rebuilding the city. So the idea they came up with is to bring people from different range of experience and different fields and disciplines, including scientists, including painters, architects, engineers, and they put them together in order to come up with new, different, or new ways of innovation. And actually, the intersection of all of these ideas made Florence a special city right now. I'm going to give you another example of how to use association. So if you notice right now, most of the big hospitals, actually, when they start to build these hospitals, they think of hotels and how hotels are so big and welcoming people with a huge reception, with cozy rooms. And if you notice, the new hospitals, they're taking that design and make it as a hospital because they want people to feel welcome in the hospital. They want them to feel relaxed in the hospital, and they want them to feel less stressed in the hospitals. Another skill is questioning, and with questioning is not about getting the right answer. It's more about thinking of the right question. What is the right question to ask? Actually, if you want to be an innovator or like come up with a new invention, you have to like ask a lot of questions, including why we don't do it this way, how we can improve it, what if we did it that way. All of this is going to help you to ideate and to come up with different like ideas and different perspectives. Let me give you an example in here. Michael Dell actually, he asked a question: why computers cost 5 times of its parts? So the parts are cheaper than the whole computer. He figured out the answer and he built Dell, and now Dell is like a big company that it's a multi-billion company that's controlling the market. Bulent?
Yes. So observation. When you are walking around, you need to always figure things, what is happening around you, and be questioning adding the questioning skills to your observations. And let's see whether I can advance this. Unfortunately, yeah, okay. So click next, please. So some of you may not know what this on the left side, what this picture is. It's a checkbook. I mean, checkbooks are relics of the past, but there used to be checkbooks, and this woman here is very frustrated about something. And on the right, you have a table. So what do those three things happen? Click, please. What happened is the founder of Quicken observed his wife sitting at the kitchen table and being very frustrated trying to balance her checkbook. So what you used to do is you used to balance the checkbooks every month or every week or whatever. And I remember there would be pennies that were missing. It would drive me crazy because how can I not get all the pennies to line up? So he happened to be visiting another company, I believe it was Apple, where they showed some beautiful graphics and tables and said, why can't my wife use a table like this, a graphical user interface like this, and not be frustrated? And that's how a company called Quicken was born. And last time I checked, they have about $500 million revenue. Next, please. So as you can see on the roads today, we have these little lines that divide the two-way traffic. This didn't used to be the case, and there would be lots of crashes, and people didn't know what to do, which side of the road to drive. Are they on the wrong side, on the right side? And the gentleman by the name of Edward Hines in 1911, he was driving one day, and he saw a milk wagon, and there was a leak, and there was a little line that was left on the road, and he came up with the idea of, why don't we paint lines to divide the lanes on the roads? And that's how the lane dividers came up, and they're still evolving. Next, please. So experimenting. Another way of ideating is to just try things and see where that will take you. You may not know where you're going to end up with, but keep on trying. As Thomas Edison said, I've not failed. I've simply found tens of thousands of ways that don't work. And that's what attitude you should be when you're innovating and inventing something new, when you're ideating, trying to come up with new ideas. Keep on trying different things relentlessly. Next, please. So Amazon Prime started as an experiment. One engineer said, hey, boss, why can't we just charge a flat fee per year and ship for free? And Bezos said, interesting idea. Let's give it a try, but let's keep the experiment very small. So they started with a pilot program with not so many people, so they don't lose money. And now Amazon Prime has taken off like a wildfire. And I know I was one of the first people who got subscribed to Amazon Prime. And I was paying $89 a year back then. And I was thinking I paid my $89. I need to get my money's worth back. So I kept on ordering more and more and more, much more than I would have done otherwise. So Amazon, by experimenting, they figured out a great idea. Next, please. Networking. So you need to meet with different people, and you need to figure things. You need to get their perspectives. And the more people you meet, the more perspectives you will get, and your ideas will be richer. Next, please. So one example is the BlackBerry. I know now it's probably the relic of the past, but the BlackBerry was huge in the early 2000s. And the idea occurred to the founder of BlackBerry. He went to a conference. So this is the part of networking. And he was listening to different people, and he saw a design where they were using a dispensing machine for Coke, where it was send a signal when it needed refilling. So he said, maybe I can use that technology to do something, to communicate between people. And that's how BlackBerry was born. So when you have an opportunity to go to a conference, to go to a meetup, to go to anything, don't miss the chance to network with people. Take all of these opportunities and leverage them. So they did some analysis of 3,000 entrepreneurs and executives, and they looked at the 5 skills that we covered so far: the associating, the questioning, observing, experimenting, and networking. And they looked at the non-innovators, and non-innovators were about 40th percentile. Then they looked at the four entrepreneurs from Dell, from BlackBerry, eBay, and Intuit. And you can see how these people have much richer strength in some of these dimensions. They're not strong in every dimension, but they're strong at least in one dimension. They shine in that, and they leverage that to innovate. So when you're thinking about your ideation, figure out how you can leverage one or multiple of these skills, and you have to be very conscious about it, and you have to grow your skills in those areas. Next, please. So why do these people want to innovate? And these, as you saw, these people, they have been pretty successful, but they continue to innovate. It is not the money. So innovators, what drives them is, as Steve Jobs said, they want to put a ding in the universe. They want to change the status quo. That's why they're observing. That's why they're associating. That's why they're going and networking. And they take risk to experiment so the change can happen. Next, please. So if you think about, if you wanted to have a couple of commercially viable ideas, how many ideas do you think that you would have? And unfortunately, we don't have time right now do we have a poll? Okay. Yeah. So guess in Lama G, maybe we can display this, what people are saying.
So you're going to find in the chat the poll. So if you can access it and put your answer in there.
So Lama G, there are some black spots on your screen, so we cannot see things clearly.
How about now? All right.
Okay, 20 to 30. So somebody says it's not working.
Try again. It's supposed to be working.
Well, we have two people who managed to make it work.
Just guess. All right.
We have 20, 30, 30. We have 5. We have 1. We have 5.
All right. Should I lock it, Professor?
More answers, people.
Maybe we should wait.
Hurry up. Access the link and just put your answer. What do you think is the right answer? Because you're going to be surprised, actually.
Yes. Make wild guesses. Come on, people. Many is not a number. We need one number. We need an actual number. So we have 1, we have 5, we have 10, we have 20, we have 30. More guesses. Less and many are not numbers. Let's go, people. Okay. And the rest of you are probably okay, we have 4, we have 5, we have okay, maybe we should lock it now.
All right.
Okay. So Lama, do you want to continue with?
Yes. Okay, let me share that.
So you would be surprised when you see the number. The number is 4,000. Are you falling off your chair yet? So it turns out that with 4,000 ideas, about a couple of hundred of them make a kind of a sense to pursue as a product. And of those, 12 maybe start selling, and 2 to 3 actually have a commercial success. They will become viable companies. Look at these numbers, 4,000 down to 2. So when you're ideating, you need to explode your ideations. You need to have many, many, many ideas, hundreds and thousands of ideas, in order for you to get with one that is going to have legs, that's going to fly. Next, please. So during your ideation, you need to consciously think about the concept development funnel. So you start with lots of ideas, come up with as many hundreds, if not thousands of ideas. Then you weed down, and don't think in this process here, the first stage, do not think to weed out the bad ideas. Don't qualify them. Don't think about it's a good idea, bad idea. Just put ideas on the wall. Then you start screening those ideas and say, okay, this one is probably not feasible. And then maybe you start merging some of the feasible ideas to come up with even more ideas. Then you start scoring those ideas and say, okay, I'm going to rank them 1 through 50, and I'm going to then focus on the top 2. And maybe I'll take some components of those top 2 to come up with even a couple of more ideas. And then finally, I'm going to decide on one idea that I'm going to pursue, and I'm going to test this idea. I'm going to develop a prototype. I'm going to go in front of customers. I'm going to tell them what I'm doing and see what the reaction is. I'm going to build a very primitive prototype, and I'll take it from there. Next, please.
Okay, so for now, we're going to watch a video. It's about the brainstorming rule or how to ideate. It's a really like powerful video because it shows you how the ideation process works. And since we're going to have an exercise by the end and that we're going to ask you to ideate. So this is like a great example of a process of ideation. So let's watch it together.
I happened into the Stanford Design Institute, and they told me how to brainstorm effectively, okay? So, Jackie, would you mind writing? And be sure to capture all the ideas, right? Because every idea is important, yeah, even the wild ones, because that's how you get to a really innovative solution. One thing is defer all judgment on other people's ideas and your own, okay? Mm-hmm. All right, so this is back. We're going to figure out how can we preserve gum, okay? Let's get some really wild ones. Let's see how many we can get. Okay.
Gum. Ready, go. Okay, you have a notebook with gum wrappers in it.
Notebook with gum wrappers. Awesome. Let's build off of that. Let's build off the ideas. So the wrappers, they can add flavor to it. So every time you put your gum in, it's a new type of flavor.
Like powder.
Yeah, and on top of that, they can be warm so they can preserve the consistency.
Warm,
nice. I love that flavor.
I love how you drew that. That's really important to be visual because it helps you get other ideas.
Build off of Jackie. What if the notebook came with different flavored powder flavors that you can choose and empty it into the wrapper?
Yeah, I love that.
Flavor your own gum.
And
you can like trade, yeah.
Yeah, and you can download flavors from the internet.
I love that.
We can have like a multiplayer game. Ooh. Multiplayer game with trading. Nicholas, an extra pound.
I almost interrupted you. I don't ever want to cut anybody off, right? We want to stay focused on the topic. That's a great one.
I know, I have one. Okay, there can be a student, and this student, his or her whole responsibility is to hold a blow dryer on the gum, and then no matter who comes in.
Yeah, headline. That's one of the things I said. Like, if you have an idea to spit out, just give me a headline for that, because it sounds like a really good idea.
Student holds blow dryer on gum. Blow dryer. Gotcha.
Perfect. That's exactly what we want to do. Wow. All right, look how many ideas we have. Let's try to count these. How many do you think we got? Yeah, we've been brainstorming for like 3 minutes already. We've got 57 ideas.
Awesome! Woo!
All right.
B-School rocks.
No team. Whoa. Yesterday I happened into the state.
Okay, so you watched the video and you saw that how the brainstorming or ideation sessions and how is it be? How is like everybody is enthusiastic, is full of energy, they're just throwing like different ideas, and that's one of the things that we want you to do. So whenever you ideate, we want you first to focus on the customer and the customer need and what do they want, and you need to build on each other's idea. So that's a really important thing. And in the video, they use that a lot when one of them like started with an idea and each one of them started to build in that on that idea. no idea is stupid. Just like suspend all judgment, throw as many ideas as you can. You need to go fast. Like your goal here is to come up with quantity, not quality. So whenever you throw an idea, don't discuss it. So just build ideas, just throw ideas. And by the end, use drawing. And they use a lot of that during the video. They use drawing, they use symbols and different things in order just to give like themselves an idea of how this, what is that idea and how did they represent it. So one of the things that you have to use it when you build on each other idea is saying yes and. Whenever you ideate, do not use the word but. That will ruin the whole exercise of ideation. You always say yes and we're gonna do blah blah blah. So always use yes and. So for now, we're going to send you to breakout room, but not everybody in here. So we're gonna send half of you guys to breakout rooms, and we're going to ask the rest of you to stay here in the main room.
Lama,
Yes.
we don't have breakout rooms.
Okay. So I'm not sure who's the host or who has the like the option of having breakout room. Mariam? Hello? Mariam, do you hear me?
I think we lost Miriam as well.
So I'm not sure who's the other person.
We had an IT person.
Allow us a few minutes for us to maybe reconnect with the tech team, and just 1 minute, please.
Okay, no problem. So for that 1 minute, we can maybe take questions. So who has a question, you can just type it, you can unmute yourself and start talking. I see someone wrote something in the chat.
Fawaz, did you have something to say?
Yes, actually, when presenting, for example, to an investment community, and where you have a modular product that could have several ideas, a lot of the VCs, but I hear that most of the VCs, they look at it as this an unfocused venture or a startup. How can you address, different products that built on a basic product that you have built and that can produce several product lines? Thank you.
So you always, the VCs are right. I mean, they're not right always, but in this case, they're correct. You need to focus on one thing, okay? You need to put all of your energy behind the strongest idea that you have, the biggest pain that a customer segment has, and go after that. Okay, so think of an icebreaker in the North Pole, in the North Sea. The icebreaker has a very pointed front, right? It breaks the ice, and then later on, it kind of widens so other ships can pass behind it. So you need to have the same mentality and say, I'm gonna have a beachhead. I'm gonna own one sliver of a market, small niche, and then from there on, I'm going to grow. And the way to address it to VCs is to have at the end of your presentation to have future development or future opportunities, and say, hey, we're gonna start with XYZ. That's our strongest point. We're gonna own this. We feel very strong about it. And once we dominate that niche, then we're going to expand into these other areas. We have endless opportunities. That this idea has so many legs, so many dimensions that we can grow it to. But first we're focusing on this one thing. Fawaz, does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Any good question, by the way. Thank you, Fawaz. Anybody else? Any other questions? Anybody has experience with ideation? Anybody can share?
Yes, I have a question, please.
Yes, you have.
How can you validate your idea?
How can you validate your idea? It is, I mean, I wish we had a more interactive session where I can ask the rest of the class, but since we doesn't look like we have an opportunity to do that as much, I'll answer the question. Unless somebody has an answer, jump in. Otherwise, I'll start talking. Anybody? So the best thing to validate your idea is to go to the people who matter. And the people who matter are not the VCs. They're not your board of directors. They're not your consultants. They're not your professor. They're not your experts. The people who matter are your users and your customers, your prospective customers or your prospective users. So you go and you test your idea with them. That's how you start validating it. Right? There's a series of validation you have to go through, but the first hurdle is customers and users. If you cannot find a pain that they care about, they can reach into their pocket and pay you money, your idea is not valid. I mean, it's a nice idea, but it doesn't have legs. It's not going to become a commercial success. So you have to pass the first hurdle that you need to pass is validate with your customer. Is there a pain? Do they have that need? Do they care? Is the pain big enough for them to pay you money? And after that, there are additional hurdles where you have to figure out whether the market is big enough, how the competition stacks up, how much advantage you have over the competition. I mean, if you're a Me Too product, if you have like slightly different advantage, then you probably won't be very successful, especially if there's an incumbent. If you're only slightly better than the incumbent, you will have a failure. You just invalidated your product. But if you have some important advantage that your customer has a pain around, that's when your idea will be valid. And then you have to have the team, you have to have the technology. A lot of startups fail because they don't have the right team. And finally, the timing. Significant number of companies fail because the timing is not right. You're either too early or too late. And it's ironic that you could fail because you're too early. Well, there's a case with a company called Webvan, which in the early 2000s, I think in 2002, they introduced this highly automated way of shipping groceries to your home. And the company raised $1 billion and then they went bankrupt because the timing was not right. Now, especially with the pandemic, in the last couple of years, even before the pandemic, grocery deliveries to the home was increasing. And in fact, when Walmart introduced that a couple of years ago, their stock jumped 4% in one day. It's a huge number for a large company, for their stock to jump 4% just because of one thing. They started shipping groceries through home. But Webvan was 20 years early to market. So, Ihab, does that answer your question?
Yes, perfectly clear. Just one more question. When you're talking about pain, is it same related to the gap in the industry?
So the gap in the industry, the gap is more of a theoretical thing. I mean, you do some analysis and some marketing expert says, hey, there's a gap here that is not filled. So it is interesting tidbit of information that there is a gap, but if nobody cares, the gap is immaterial. Okay, I mean, like they say, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody hears about it, who cares? Who cares that there's a gap if people are not feeling the pain for that gap? But if that gap is resulting in a pain for somebody cannot do their job, or somebody's frustrated, or somebody is extremely inefficient, and you show them how to be better, more efficient, that's when the gap matters. Good questions. And I don't know, IT team, do we have a? Go ahead, hold on a second. IT team, do we have the breakout rooms resolved, or we're gonna give up on breakout rooms?
Lama, can you kindly check from you, because you're the host, you should be able to see the breakout rooms. Can you let us know, please? Hi, I don't see the breakout room button at all. And I cannot make anyone co-host either, so I don't know what is the...
So maybe she's not the host.
Yeah, the actual host, the owner of the Zoom, is the one that is able to do so.
No, it appears to me that you're the host. Let me check.
In the meantime, while they're doing that, maybe Lama G and Miriam, you can take it to a private chat to figure things out. In the meantime, this is good. We're going to just go with more questions. You have some very interesting questions, and I hope the rest of the audience is also interested in that. So shoot.
Actually,
Start speaking.
I want to add something, Bulent, about the question from Ihab about customer validation. Most of the customer validation happen during like interview. When you go to validate your idea, you have to go and interview your customers. And make sure when you interview your customer at the beginning, don't send a survey. Go meet real people. Go meet real people in pain. And try to figure out if they need that product or no, and make sure you are not now selling your product. You're not now asking, like going to them with your product saying, do you need this? This is doing this and that. Do you need it? Are you going to buy it with this much? Go and ask them, empathize with them. So go and ask them general question about their days. What do they do? How do they figure out things? And like during that conversation, you're gonna find some insights and some like ideas that maybe they were not in your mind. And at that point, you're gonna figure out if they need your idea or not. This is the best way to validate your idea with the customers.
In the meantime, Ihab had another question in the chat. How can you identify those target clients? So first of all, client is a term used in the consulting world. In the startup world, in the corporations, you use a customer, you use a user. So how do you identify customers? Well, that's the tough part. You need to figure out how can you reach out to them. And networking is the best way. You can use LinkedIn. In many countries, there's associations for anything. So in one of my startups, we were trying to figure out whether we can sell to the grain producers, grain silos. And it turns out in the United States, where I live, there is a thick book of associations. It's a director of association. There's association for almost anything. So we found an association of grain producers of the United States. And they were located somewhere in the Midwest, Iowa, or something like that. And our CEO jumped on a plane, went and met with the director of the association, and he said, hey, this is the area we're focused on. What kind of problems do you have? And this gentleman said, oh, we have the following XYZ problems. And our CEO said, can you put me in touch with those people? So that's how we started. And every time you talk to somebody, say, who else should I talk to? Because those people have networked together. They know each other. And once you can kind of do the networking and walk to the graph. And eventually that graph took us to Australia, of all places. Started with the United States, but somebody knew somebody that knew somebody knew somebody in Australia. And apparently in Australia, there are 8,000 grain silos. And that's the biggest market for grain silos and biggest market for our product. So based on that, we raised money, and we raised money from an Australian VC. And our first market was Australia. So we talked to a lot of people in Australia. So there's no prescribed formula. I cannot tell you do X, Y, and Z, but try to look at your network, try to find associations, try to find NGOs, go to the government. Many governments have support for startups, and they may say, oh yeah, for that, maybe we have a department that's looking into that, and maybe those people know some other people. So that is the toughest thing that you will be faced with, but it's also at the same time the most important thing. And a little bit more about validation. So as Lama said, you start with finding those people that you talk to, and you ask them open-ended questions, try to find their pain points. Now, once you figure it out, then in later stages, you figure out a solution, then you start trying your solution with them. And the mantra here is you need to fail fast and fail frequently. So you may have an idea of a product. You go start talking to customers and say, no, that's not a problem. Then all of a sudden you don't have an idea, that your idea was wrong, but they're telling you information that that's not my problem. And then you ask immediately, so what is your top 3 problems? And then maybe your technology, your approach may help them with other pain points that they have. And you should pivot. And you should pivot as early as possible. And you should pivot as frequently as possible. In one of my startups, we pivoted 6 times. And one of the examples I use in my class is Slack. Some of you have used the Slack channels. And Slack started as a gaming company. And they raised $50 million, and they were running out of money. They had a couple of $1 million left in the bank, and their games were not flying. The games were not being used by people. So they had a choice of shutting down the company. But somebody said, "Hey, we developed all this communication vehicle for our gamers. Maybe we can turn that into a productivity tool." They did that, and now they're worth tens of billions of dollars in the market. They're a high-flying company. So pivoting from gaming to productivity is a huge jump. So do not try to be prejudicial and say, "Oh, I have to stick into my original idea." Don't be very conservative. And once you have the confirmed that the customer has the pain, and then you go in front of them with a paper idea. You just show them maybe a little drawing that how it's going to work, and then say, critique this. Does this address your pain point? And once you validate that you're kind of in the right direction, come up with a very crude prototype. It doesn't have to be automated. It doesn't have to be fully functioning. It doesn't have to be complete. So like Kareem, when they started, Kareem had a long list of features they wanted to do, but you know how they started? They started on the phone. They would schedule all the calls just manually to try the idea, and it took off. And then they automated a part of it. And then that was good too, and then kept on adding more and more. So we have somebody raise their hand. Please speak. Good questions, by the way. Keep coming with the questions. Yeah, and yes, pivoting and prototyping is important. And in the prototype, you start with the crudest prototype that you can come up with. The easiest one that you can come up with, and then you can increase the complexity and the sophistication, so you can have higher and higher fidelity of your prototypes. But always start with the crudest one, because if you're on the wrong path, you want to know as soon as possible so you can stop wasting your time. I met once a serial entrepreneur, and what he was saying was that every 6 months he reevaluates what he's doing, and if he's not making progress in his original idea, he says time to pivot, shut down that idea or change it and do something different. And he was talking about his latest venture. So he said, what if I do, if I put 3 books, take them into audiobooks, put them in a package, and ship them every month to executives? Would that fly? So what he did was he blasted a message to a couple of hundred executives that he thought there would be his potential market. And he put a link there that said, if you're interested, purchase here. And in like a couple of days, he had 50 purchases. He had no product. I mean, how cheaper can you do? He didn't spend a dime and figured out that there was a potential market. So now he was saying that he had to scramble. In 30 days, he had to find people to audio record 3 books. He had to select 3 books, audio record them, put them in boxes, and ship them to those 50 people. Very soon, in like 6 months, he was making $500,000 a month. And he started he flew what's called a trial balloon. He just pretended he had the product, and he said, if you're interested, click here to purchase it. Good questions. Anybody else? Any other questions?
You can use the chat to write your questions.
Or you can speak.
Exactly.
So any other topics that you want to discuss?
It seems like we're going to move on.
Ruba looks like has something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say
Ruba, did you have a question?
Dr. Lama wanted to say, which is that we're having a problem with Zoom, so maybe we can move ahead with the session without the breakout rooms. depending on your schedule.
No problem. So we're going to continue with the Q&A. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and open the floor for more questions.
So we had an interesting exercise plan, but it required breakout rooms. And since we are technically constrained right now, we are going to do a Q&A session on ideation or any other topics that you can think of. So Lama and I are teaching a course at KAUST on entrepreneurship. So any questions that you have on entrepreneurship, you can shoot at us. I don't pretend that we're going to have all the answers, but we will give our best. What's on your mind? What's your burning question? Come on, people. You must have at least one or two questions.
Free consultation.
Okay,
Maybe questions from the other sessions.
I'm going to show the question. How do you make yourself visible and build a brand?
Your voice was garbled. How do you make yourself visible? Is that what you said?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
How do you make yourself visible and build your brand? The best thing that I have found out is through reference through customer references. I mean, yeah, you can do commercials, you can advertise on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, wherever you want to advertise. But the best thing that works is word of mouth. This is how Google started. When Google started early on, I had a coworker that said, "Hey, there's this interesting website called Google.com, and they have an email called Gmail." And I said, "Well, I want to start." He said, "Oh no, it's only by invitation only." And I said, "So how do you know about it?" He said, "Well, my friend works at Google, so he invited me, so now I started using Gmail." And I said, "Well, if you use Gmail, can you invite me?" So he invited me, and I started using Gmail from one of the earliest users of Gmail. So that's how a lot of things start, with word of mouth. If you have happy customers, they start talking about you. And if you can create a community around your idea, and McAfee was a very great example of that. When McAfee started, before he started, he had these. Back then, there was no Facebook, there was no Instagram, none of that. So he used what's called a bulletin board. So he had an electronic bulletin board, and he had a bunch of followers. So he was writing interesting articles, and people were following him, and he had thousands of people that were in his blog. And when he came up with the antivirus idea, he started using that to disseminate his idea, and it was a networking effect. I don't believe that McAfee ever advertised in his early days. It was through his followers and the word of mouth that it grew and grew and grew. People started using it. So I would suggest you blog, you create a blog, and you figure out how you can connect your customers. And if people get to value your idea, they will start following you, and they will tell about you to their friends, and that's how it will grow. Of course, you need to do all the classical things of coming up with a vision statement and mission statement and try to explain it to people. But there's nothing more powerful than customers. So there's a comment on the chat. I get so attached to one idea and I find it difficult to come up with different ideas. Any suggestions? So do not fall in love with your first idea, because your idea is to build a product for yourself. And you have to remember, you are not your own customer. You're not building a product for yourself. You're not building a product for your family, for your friends, for your roommate, for your loved ones. No, for your classmates. You're building a product for strangers. And most likely, your target audience, your target customers will not be represented in your network, in your closest friends, in your closest people. So actually assume that you have the wrong idea. And then you start talking to prospective users and prospective customers. And as Lama said, ask open-ended questions. Hey, so for example, one of the startups from KAUST, they were trying to figure out what kind of product to build for, and they started asking customers, what are your challenges? Not, instead of saying we have this product, they started asking, what are your challenges? And if you don't see your solution as one of the answering as one of the challenges, you have the wrong idea. Then you keep on thinking. People will tell you what their problems are. So in one of the startups that in the past that we pivoted 6 times, we were trying to sell a product to for food safety, and we got a consultant from who was an ex-vice president for Safeway, which is a huge grocery chain in the United States. So we got him and we started talking and said, hey, what are your top 3 priorities? And we expected him to say food safety. Well, guess what? Food safety was not part of the top 3 priorities. And he said, well, what about top 10 priorities? Well, food safety was not part of the 10 top priorities. And we said, okay, we're in the wrong path. So we need to pivot and we need to figure out what else to do. So we actually pivoted to air conditioners, trying to figure out how we can do predictive maintenance for air conditioners. And then we went to amateur radio users, and we tried different things until we stumbled finally to the grain silo idea. But you need to keep trying different ideas. You have a product in mind, or you have a technology in mind, but that technology most likely can be applied to many different things. One of the examples we use in class is the laser. When the laser was invented, it was not a product. People said, who would need a coherent light? And it was a solution that was looking for a problem. And it took years to get the first products out there. And finally, with the DVD and CD-ROM, it exploded. Looks like we're out of time. Unless there's one last question, I think we're going to conclude the session.
Hello.
Yes, Ali.
Yes. Sometimes you find solution or idea based on struggles that customer will eventually have. How can we fasten the process of this process? I'll give an example. For example, this pandemic forced us to digital transformation or finding any digital solution. So how can we fasten the process? For example, that in the future, client or customer, will have the need for a specific solution. But the main question that I have is how to fasten this process or create the need.
Yeah, so that's a tough one. There are very few companies that have predicted the future correctly all the time. Even Apple, Steve Jobs is a great visionary. He has made lots of mistakes, and the one that I remember, there's lots of them. The one I remember is Lisa. Apple spent tons of money on developing this mini computer, and it flopped. It didn't make any money for them because they anticipated there was going to be need, and the need was not there. So, but on the other hand, the iPhone is a smashing success. Nobody knew that we needed a smartphone, but it turns out that we need it now. We cannot do without a smartphone. So it is very risky to try to predict the future. It's always safer to go and look for problems that people have today that don't have a solution. But today, with the pandemic, you can go to people and you could not have predicted the pandemic, right? You could not have predicted that people will be forced. But companies like Zoom and companies like Slack, they were already riding the wave of more and more digitization, more remote work, and they were ready. They were primed for the explosion. But it was a real problem. There were distributed teams before the pandemic. I've had teams that were distributed in India, China, Ireland, and different time zones, different locations, different languages. So we were using Zoom, we were using Slack to communicate like 5 years ago. In fact, one of the companies I worked for, there were 7,000 people in the company, and there were 21,000 Slack channels. And Zoom was used on a daily basis. So they had the technology and they were ready, primed for the explosion. But could they have predicted and say, we're going to develop a product and wait for a pandemic? That probably is not a very viable strategy. Good question. Thank you, Ali. I think we're out of time, Lama.
Yes, time is up, and I believe it's time to end the session. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed this session.